we all must have a very sort of impartial state of mind. We are not trying to make you attain enlightenment right now. We just want you all to understand. This is the absolute necessary thing. I want to repeat this every time I have this class. Because some of the stuff that we discuss here may be above your thinking, above your, over your head. Because it is too far-fetched for average people. But it is absolutely necessary for us to understand. One day, perhaps, we might be ready to grasp the meaning of this in our life. This Dhamma is not very, on the one hand it is very simple, on the other hand because of our complicated state of mind, it is very difficult. I want to make this warning to show you to. Now depending on the on ignorance, this feeling due to our body, when we think about the body, a feeling arises. If it is, if we feel good about the body, we have good feeling. How you, what makes you think the body is good?
Health.
Huh?
Health.
Our ignorance.
Health.
The way we think, the ignorant way of thinking.
Yes, we think, you are right, when we feel healthy, we feel very good. Is health something permanent?
No.
No, when we think that when we are healthy, we think very good, we feel good. Can we maintain that feeling, good feeling?
No.
We cannot maintain. Why? Because body has its own agenda. Morning when I get up, I feel very good. But some people when they get up in the morning, they feel yucky. They even cannot talk to somebody. Towards the evening, my good feeling in the morning is gone. So, because of my body, I feel good at one time, bad at another time. This is because of my ignorance. What is ignorance? I am not fully aware of the fact that this body is changing. It is 100% true. Similarly, there is only one factor. This discourse you can find in Anguttara Nikaya called Chetana Sutta. Chetana Sutta. Thought of thinking that makes us feel good or bad. Thinking makes it so. Shakespeare said, there is nothing good or bad. Thinking makes it so. And we think this way or that way because of our ignorance. Otherwise, we always will be in equanimous, peaceful state. Okay? Then, when there are words, due to thinking of words, internal pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling arise depending on ignorance. When there are words, we always have words. When we verbalize something, If it is very pleasant, we have pleasant feeling. If our words are not very pleasant, within the family, among friends, among people, we feel very bad. So somebody said, I think when we are alone, take care of your words. When you are with people, no, when you are alone, take care of your thought. When you are with people, take care of your words. Even when we are alone, we have to think very carefully about our thoughts, because what we think, we utter. If we think of somebody, something about somebody all the time, while thinking we have unpleasant feeling. If we think of somebody with a good feeling, in a friendly way, we will have a good feeling. So when we think, I'm going to say such and such to so and so. During that period, while we are formulating our words, depending on our thinking, we experience pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling. Even that is due to ignorance. Why is that? Because we don't know what we are going to say, how it will come to our lips, from our mouth, and what kind of repercussions will there be once we utter it. We cannot plan in advance to talk to somebody. All depends on that situation. So you cannot predict in advance how we are going to talk and what we are going to say. Even though we plan, it may turn out to be something different because things are uncertain, unpredictable. This uncertainty, unpredictability cannot be known in advance. That is our ignorance. Okay, when there is mind, due to thinking of mind, internal pleasant feeling and unpleasant feeling arises, depending on ignorance. The mind is the devil workshop. We don't know what the mind does. But we think so many things. I mean, there is no end to our thinking. And depending on this thinking, pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling arises. Only we, each and every individual, know it. Nobody else knows. Nobody else knows what we think. Nobody else knows how we feel. We always don't think in a right way, in a factual way. Because what we think is speculative. Suppose I want to think of you. I think, he is thinking like this. He is doing such and such. He is talking. I really don't know. It is my own fabrication in my own mind. But you have completely different way of thinking, different way of different attitudes and so on. I know nothing about you. But in my mind, I think about you. So the thinking makes us pleasant or unpleasant depending on our degree of ignorance. So Buddha said, either by oneself bodily volitional formations are accumulated depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises. By oneself, that means individual, each and every individual, bodily volitional formations. Oneself, bodily volitional formations accumulate. Thinking of my body, I have a sort of desire to think about me. And that turns out to be my volitional formations, thinking about me. My achievement, my success, my pride, my this, all sort of things about me and me, mine, I think. And depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises when I think about myself. Or others cause to accumulate bodily volitional formations depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises. Sometimes we think normally some people say, such and such a politician, there's such and such a thing, it is so nerve-wracking. The nation is going to dogs. Our society is in chaos. Our life is going to be miserable. Thinking of somebody else. Don't we get that feeling? Sometimes we get this feeling. And therefore, this volitional feeling that creates pain in me or pleasure in me depends on somebody else. Not only because of me. I am all right. I am just, righteous, correct, always, very good in every sense. But others, not so. I am always right. I am right. Everybody else has problems. They speak like this, they walk like this, they behave like this, they think like this, they dress like this. So many things I find in others. But me, everything is okay. So, because of my ignorance, I create my suffering. Or, if I have a different attitude towards everybody else, I create my happiness. For instance, I think I want everybody to be peaceful and happy. When I think of that, when I think of those thoughts, I feel happy. But anytime I think of anybody's shortcomings, problems, weakness, faults, I feel unhappy. So therefore, not only thinking of me, but thinking of others, we have feelings. Or knowingly bodily volitional formations are accumulated, depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises, or unknowingly bodily volitional formations accumulate, depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises. Now, what is knowingly bodily volitional formations are accumulated, depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises. I know yeah, in the handouts you don't find this. This is additional information I got because this is a very long description. It's difficult to make copies of all of them. I just want to talk about feelings. So, internally, bodily volitional formations accumulate depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises. Knowingly, this is interesting. What do I know about me? I know about my weaknesses. I cannot do everything that everybody else does. But I know my limitation. Knowing these limitations, I feel very unhappy. Because others are there who can do much better than me. I feel sort of inferior. And I feel bad. Knowing my weaknesses. Not one, two, three, many. I feel unhappy. Or knowingly, I know my strength. Then I'll be happy. And this also is due to my ignorance. Because my weakness is not unnatural, normal, but I don't know that. And that is where my ignorance is. And then, unknowingly bodily volitional formations are accumulated depending on which internal happiness or suffering arises. Unknowingly. That is very common. Then, similarly, either by oneself, verbal volitional formations are accumulated depending on which internal suffering or happiness arises is almost the same. Repeat as before. So ignorance follows all these states. That's called Dhamma. All these states are called Dhamma. By a relentless cessation of ignorance, that body does not come into being, depending on the internal suffering or happiness arise. Okay. Now, we talk about feelings. I said first there are three kinds of feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. Or there are 5 kinds of feelings: happiness, unhappiness, pleasure, joy, and equanimity. 5. There are these 6 kind of feelings arising through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind. Now these 6 kind of feelings can be multiplied by 3, the past, present and future. So then we have 18. These 18 multiply by 36. No. 6 kind of feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, will become 18. 18, I think due to internal and external, multiply by no.
It's totally 3 type of feelings: pleasant, unpleasant, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant.
Right.
And then 6 types of feelings arising through each of the modes.
Yeah.
And 3 times 6 is 18. And then we have 3 types of feelings that is arising future, past, and present.
30.
So 54. And then again another 2 types of feelings arising through internal and external. So it's 108 feelings.
So eventually we will have 108 kind of feelings. 108 kind of feelings. Now, these are the feeling of 6 kind of joy based on the household life, and 6 kind of joy based on renunciation. There are 6 kind of grief based on the household life, and 6 kind of grief based on renunciation. And there are 6 kind of equanimity based on household life, and 6 kind of equanimity based on renunciation. Okay. Now how come that happened? When one regards as a gain the gain of forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying, and associated with worldliness, or that means 6 kind of gains or pleasure by seeing objects which we like, we desire, agreeable and gratifying, and associate with worldliness. That is called the feeling arising depending on household or worldly experience. What is that? Seeing something. Seeing something related to our ordinary worldly life. When one recalls, or if one remembers what was formerly obtained that has passed, ceased and disappeared, joy arises. And this kind of joy is called joy based on household life. That is ordinary joy. Day to day we have this kind of joy. Then by hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking of something ordinary, we have joy. First is seeing, then hearing, smelling, tasting, touching and thinking of ordinary things. And the sound we have heard in the past, sound we are hearing now, we have this joy. Smell also, when the smell that we had in the past, thinking about it, and smell that we are having now, and taste that we had in the past, and now we have that taste, and then touch we had in the past, and now we are having it, and touch, and then we think in the past, and now we get joy or pleasure. That is ordinary, what you call household pleasure. Even though they are past, pleasant feeling past, we still remember them. And that memory brings us pleasure. That is called the joy arising, sixth kind of joy arising through our six senses, and they belong to household, ordinary. Pali word is very, very simple. Samisa. Samisa sukha. Samisa with flesh, in this fleshy body. See, samisa. Then there is another sixth kind of pleasant feeling that is not ordinarily people enjoy. That is why I said this is just for understanding. What is the next kind of group of pleasant feeling? That is called pleasant feeling of renunciation. How does that happen? Seeing, we take only seeing first. Seeing or knowing impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of forms. Forms, past, present, future, internal, external, gross, subtle, low or high, whatever form, in any form, we see impermanence and changing, fading away, and cessation. We say their cessation. So one sees as it actually is with proper wisdom. That forms both formally and now are all impermanent, suffering and subject to change. Joy arises. How many of you can have got that joy? Not too many people. But when you meditate, honestly, sincerely, with mindfulness, with clear comprehension, you definitely will see the form is changing.
Usually, like lay people, they would have an unpleasant feeling when they know, right, the body is changing.
That is because of the ignorance.
Right.
Now, that is why I say, in fact, whether it is lay people or monastics, when they really, honestly, impartially see internal changes within themselves, this is a very great awareness. There arises joy because the unpleasant things change as well as pleasant things. Unpleasant form, unpleasant appearance change as much as the pleasant one. So there is no difference. There is no difference. When one sees this with wisdom, one would not have grief. One would rather have joy, because this is universal truth, not something particular to me. It is universal.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah?
In for the ordinary joy, when we recall things in the past, it's never it's always error. It's got some error in it. It's somehow veiled by, I don't know the Pali word, just like avidya, the veil of ignorance.
Yeah.
What we remember from the past is not exactly how it happened. There's always that veil of ignorance that is somehow distorting the joy. But when we have the joy that comes out of renunciation, when it's just the level of the joy, is there still some veil of ignorance that's there? Or is the veil completely removed when you go to the level of absolute happiness?
I did not hear the question clearly.
When we recall ordinary joy,
Yeah.
the householder joy, what we remember that brings this joy is not exact. There is some veil of ignorance, because what we remember is never exactly how things happened.
Right.
But the joy that arises from renunciation, is it still veiled by some level of ignorance, or is it not beyond?
Right. You know, that depends on the level of enlightenment. At a certain level, the lower level of enlightenment, you still have ignorance until you attain full enlightenment. For instance, when you attain the first level of enlightenment, ignorance is still there. When you attain the highest level of what you call arahanthood, only then ignorance will be totally vanished. Now, that we achieve slowly and gradually. Therefore, the first thing we have to have understanding. So this is the level that we are trying to understand.
Bhante, a question. It's said that dependent on the contact, the feeling arises.
Right.
And the feeling can be pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. But is it not that based on the contact, the way we perceive things and the way we conceive things, that brings the feelings?
Yeah.
Because incorrect perception and the way incorrect conceiving of form and any we see or anything that we hear, that's where we get the ignorance comes into picture, where how we conceive it and how we perceive things.
Right. And that is what I mentioned earlier in the first section. So long as we have a body and words and so forth, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, as I said, depending on ignorance. Yeah. This is a very big subject. We have to go slowly to understand. We are trying to study the sutta, the sutta called right understanding or right view. So we came to this level now, and as we go on, we will see more factors that lead to understanding. Okay, so such a joy is called joy based on renunciation. Joy based on renunciation. That has nothing to do with anything personal. Nothing to do with anything personal. Because this is universal truth. And that is what brings us wisdom. And seeing this with wisdom brings us joy. Why is that? Why that happens and how it happens? Because we penetrate the superficiality. Ordinary level we penetrate and went to the very core or heart of the truth. Beyond that you cannot go. When something is impermanent, beyond impermanent you cannot penetrate. Because that is what the Buddha called root of Dhamma. Dhamma dhatu. Law of Dhamma. Dhamma niyama. Or established Dhamma. Dhamma titi. What is that? Impermanence. You cannot make it permanent anyway. So seeing that, we have to have an impartial, unbiased state of mind to see that. With bias and prejudice against your own self, you cannot see this. It has to be impartial. Then, similarly, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought, all are of the past, present, and future, internal and external, and so on and so forth. All are equally impermanent, changing, disappearing. When we penetrate this with wisdom, joy arises. That is called joy of renunciation. Now, then there are 6 kinds of griefs. Now we mentioned 6 kinds of joy, 6 kinds of household joy, 6 kinds of joy of renunciation. That's called samisa sukha, samisa, niramisa sukha. Samisa sukha, niramisa sukha. Now we go to samisa dukkha, grief. When one regards as a non-gain, the non-gain of forms cognizable by the eye that are wished for, desired, agreeable, gratifying and associated with worldliness, or when one recalls what was formerly not obtained that has passed, ceased, and changed, grief arises. This is very common thing, isn't it? When we don't gain what we want now, that means we are losing. Or we don't gain what we wish, what is agreeable to us, what brings us some gain, prosperity, reputation, and so forth and so on. We don't get it. We wish to get it, we try to get it, we don't get it. Grief arises. This is very common thing. You don't need any explanation. Every single day you encounter this kind of grief. With eyes, similarly with ears, we don't hear the sound we want to hear. We want to hear that, you are beautiful, you are handsome, you are young looking, you are this and that. Your voice is beautiful, your appearance is beautiful, your this and that is beautiful. We like to hear that. In the past, we heard good things about us, so we remember that. But we don't hear that anymore. So we like to hear certain songs, music. We don't hear that. We go to the concert and instruments are malfunctioning. You know, the artists who are coming to perform are sick. We will be disappointed. So, the speech, you want to hear very beautiful, pleasant speech. You go there, the speaker has sore throat. And his speech is very interrupted because the PA system doesn't work. Or something or other happens, the speech is not acceptable. And so forth. Seeing, smelling, we want to smell something very pleasing, but we smell of a dead body. Taste, we want to taste what we like, but the taste appears to be very unpleasant, and so forth. Touch and thought. From all these things arise grief. We are not looking forward to those things. They happen. And this kind of grief is called household life. Grief on the household life. It's a very good term, household life. That doesn't mean that you're holding a house. That doesn't mean that only you, those who are living, or those who have what you call landlords. You don't need a house. You can live under a tree, in a cave, and somewhere even homeless. And still this kind of feeling arises in us, whether you have a home or not. And therefore, however, since it is what we call mundane, ordinary, it is called samisa. In Pali word is very easy to remember. Samisa dukkha. So, Similarly, through ICS and so forth, we have samisa, household, the grief based on household life. Then there is 6 kind of grief based on renunciation. Probably you might be interested in knowing that, because you don't need any explanation about the grief arising depending on household life. But the renunciation, as I said, the one who undertakes renunciation, one who wants to be a renunciant, has some disappointment with household life, frustrated and a lot of problems and so forth and so on. And thinks renounced life is far better than current life. So with this hope, the one renounces. And then even that renounced life has what you call grief. What is that? He or she practices, as I mentioned earlier, meditation, mindful, with clear comprehension, following all the rules and regulations, disciplined quite well, and the practice is very consistent, following the instructions given by teachers. Everything he follows according to the book, without breaking any rule. But once is as it actually is, with proper wisdom and from both formerly and now, are all impermanent suffering subject to change and so forth. And yet, he is in the same place. No progress. Doesn't that happen to people? When they meditate? In the same place. No improvement. However, such a person will think not only that not attaining higher stages makes the person unhappy, or grief arises not only because of that, but he or she thinks, when shall I enter upon and abide in that base that the noble ones now enter upon and abide in? I can see some of the noble people who have practiced this and have attained higher levels. I am at the same place where I started. So he thinks, when can I gain that state? When can I reach that state? That thought makes the person unhappy. Grief arises. Grief arises. But that grief is much better than household grief. Why is that? Household grief is so much complicated to deal with so many things in the world. Family, business, children, jobs, and earning and losing, paying tax, participating in the politics and business and so forth and so on. So many things involved in the household life. But in the renunciate life, one has to deal with only what one experiences in regard to impermanence unsatisfactoriness, impermanence and change. And dealing with the practice, not so many outside things, dealing with the practice. It is better because when that person sees that person has this kind of grief, the person will not be discouraged. Person will have a what you call spiritual urgency. Person will think, he can attain it, I also can attain it. So person will have some pride. I also I am young, I am practicing, I am not breaking any rule, I can do it. I can do it. If so and so can do it, I can do it. That kind of spiritual urgency arises in him or her to attain that state. Therefore, the grief of renunciation or grief based on renunciation is far better than the grief based on household life.
But householders can have the same feeling too, right?
But they have to deal with so many other external things. But renunciation has to deal only with oneself.
I see.
Bhante, so the word grief in this sense is the same as disappointment?
Right, that is disappointment.
Okay.
But the person has made a commitment to enter the renounced life. And therefore the person thinks, well, I have given up so many things. Now I am practicing this, I am doing everything right. I have not attained it yet. But other fellow practitioner has attained it. And in the past they have attained it. Therefore, I should be able to do it. So the person will become more courageous, more enthusiastic, and push a little harder. And that is worth trying. Worth trying. Because in household grief, no matter how hard you try, there are always somebody else ahead of you. And competition is there. In the spiritual practice, nobody is there to compete with you.
Yourself.
Because nobody is going to pay you more if you attain it. In household life, there is some incentive. Carrot is there. You are trying to get it. But renunciant life is 100% personal and must achieve through personal perseverance.
So Bhante, renunciation is something like becoming a monastic?
No. Becoming a monastic is a part of it.
Part of it.
I mean, that is not something must. That is, one can, when the mind is ready, one can gain there. But as a householder, they can practice renunciation. Practice.
I see.
The practice of renunciation. Now, that is the grief. Now, I said 3 kinds of feeling. Pleasant, unpleasant, and this is called not neutral but equanimity. Equanimity. In a household life there is an equanimity. 6 kind of equanimity based on household life. What is that? I mentioned only one, and by then others, from that you can understand. So the rest are implied. I first express one. In each case I take only one, others are implied because all refers to our six senses. On seeing a form with the eye, equanimity arises in a foolish, infatuated, ordinary person, in an untaught, ordinary person who has not conquered his limitations or conquered the results of actions and who is blind to danger. So, such equanimity as this does not transcend the form. That is why it is called equanimity based on the household life. Now, equanimity in the household life is something negative. Because you tried, no results. So finally you give up. Just like sour grape situation. That time you have equanimity. Doesn't matter how much I tried, I cannot again it.
But I thought equanimity was one of the divine abodes.
That is, there are 10 kinds of equanimities.
How many?
10
10. Okay.
listed in Visuddhimagga. Some of them I can mention. Like equanimity you gain when you attain jhana. Is it? Equanimity in associate one of the four Brahmaviharas. And equanimity in balancing factors. 7 factors of enlightenment. There is equanimity. And so forth. Then there is the sankhara upekka. Sankhara means volitional formations when they are happening in a certain way, knowing the whole thing correctly, equanimity arises. And so forth. There are so many types of equanimity. But this is about the feeling, equanimity feeling. Ordinary householders, when they don't achieve what they wanted to achieve, they work very hard, throw every card, and they don't gain anything. Then they give up. Then giving up kind of equanimity is a household life equanimity.
Bhante, are we talking about upeka?
What?
Is it upeka?
Upeka.
Upeka, yes. Upeka. So, this is with seeing, with object that we see with our eyes. Similarly, it goes with hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking, and so forth. Then there is another equanimity called the equanimity, or 6 kinds of equanimity based on renunciation. Probably you might be interested in knowing that. That is, again by knowing impermanence, change, fading away and cessation of forms with eyes. One sees as it actually is with proper wisdom that forms both formerly and now are all impermanent, suffering, subject to change. Equanimity arises. That is what is called equanimity based on seeing impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and changing. That is, there's nothing to excite. everything is always happening the same way, you can do nothing about it. You can do nothing about it. Whatever we try to do about it would make us foolish, because we cannot do anything about it. For instance, impermanence, you cannot do anything about it. So, that equanimity is wholesome equanimity. The mind is balanced. Neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neither good nor bad. Everything has the same characteristics, and therefore the person remains peaceful. When we see true equanimity through impermanence and so on, the person remains peaceful. And the other equanimity, household equanimity, makes the person indifferent.
What?
Nuts.
Nuts.
Yeah?
Makes the
I
person
said
nuts.
go nuts.
Crazy.
Crazy. But this equanimity makes the person peaceful. So, I think that must be enough for today's talk on feeling. On this, there are more things to say about feelings, but for today, that's enough. Now, Pali words. Of course, you can ask questions later on. Okay. Pali word for feeling is what? Vedana. Vedana. So, I think we all have learned these words somewhere. Okay. Vedana. Any word you don't understand? Vedana nirodhagamini patipada. Okay.
How about Ujugatasa, Bhante?
What?
I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Ujugatasa?
Ujjugata?
Where is it?
Uju.
Number 2 in the fourth line.
Samma ditti hoti ujugatassa ditti.
Ujjugata asti, I see. I think we have discussed this earlier. Samadhi,
Ujugatassa ditti.
Ujjugata. Ujju means straight. Gata means born. That means became straight. Ditti is views. Ujjugata ditti. Now, Sota Sampassaja, we learn first Chakku Sampassaja Vedana. Chakku is eyes, Sampassaja means born. The Sampassa means contact, Ja is born. Born from the contact of the eye, or born from the eye contact. Chakku Sampassaja Vedana. Sampassaja means Jati, birth. Born from eye contact. Then next one is Sota, is hearing. Sampassaja means born from contact. That means born from ear contact. Then Ghana Sampassaja. Ghana means nose. Sampassa, contact. Ja, born. That means born from the nose contact. Vedana. Then Jivha Sampassaja Vedana. Jivha means tongue. So the feeling born from the tongue contact. Then Kaya Sampassaja Vedana. Kaya means body. Sampassaja contact. Born from the body contact. Then Mano Sampassaja Vedana. Born from the mind contact. Now, I mentioned in the last class, the Vedana is not in any object. Feeling is not in any object. Even the body does not have feeling. Feeling arises only when there is mind, consciousness, and 2 or 3 things coming together. Always feeling arises, I mean 4 things coming together. Contact comes from 3 things coming together. What are the 3 things for the contact? Senses, sensory object, and consciousness. When these 3 things come together, contact arises. We will discuss contacts next time. So the feeling is not in any object. That may be the reason why some people want to kill animal.
I have a question here. So the feeling we're talking about today all come from contact, right?
Right.
So we're not dealing with the feelings, that come on their own. Say like, I'm hungry, I don't feel good. Unpleasant feeling because I'm hungry. So we're not dealing with those kind of feelings, right?
Those are the feelings we discussed already.
Oh, okay. Okay, so now it's the contact and feeling.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hunger, thirst, and so forth arise so long as we have the body.
Mm-hmm.
In the Chetana Sutta, first section of today's discussion, we mentioned all these kind of
Okay.
feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we didn't have time to go to
Okay.
nitty-gritty details. So anyway, a feeling arises only when there's a contact, eyes, ears, and so forth. However, the feeling does not exist in the object. That is why people who kill animals think animals don't have feelings. So they can kill. They think. They think on behalf of animals. But they have not been in the animal's position to make the decision. Of course, we see the way how animals behave when you try to kill them. So they have feelings. Anyway, so long as consciousness is there, feeling is there. If there is no consciousness, there is no feeling. Sometimes people ask, what about the trees? Don't they have feelings? They have no consciousness. Since they don't have consciousness, they don't have feeling. Anyway, next section we discuss pascha, the force of feeling, depending on what feeling arises.
Bhante, in this Vedana, it uses mano, whereas Tanha uses Dhamma, Tanha for mind objects. So why is there a difference?
Mano object is Dhamma. That means mental objects are Dhamma.
Okay.
The word Dhamma is very, very, has many meanings. The word Dhamma has many meanings. But all the meanings can be conceived by the mind. Any object that we have seen, heard, smelled, touched, and so on, becomes mental objects.
Yes.
When the mind can think of even something which is not even born, mind can think. And therefore, whatever the mind can think is its object. Sometimes they are called mental objects or mental contents. Suppose you have seen a place like, a country, people, trillions of things we have seen in the past. We close our eyes, we remember all of that. Those are mental objects. But when we visit, they are eyes, objects of our eyes. When we hear a sound, they are object of our ears. And nose, tongue is open. But later on, the second time, after that, your memory of all these things becomes your mental object. So the mental objects have more variety, countless things that have come through our other five senses. Plus imagining, visualizing, fantasizing, daydreaming, all these become mental objects.
So
And
where
they
is,
all are called Dhamma.
Bhante, where is the contact then? How do you explain the contact for mind objects?
I will discuss this
Another time.
in the next class.
Okay.
And because the next class is on contact, person.
Yes.
I will discuss that with something that we have not heard of contact. But today I don't want to start that because it is also another
Right.
at least
No, it's
low
okay.
discussion. Okay. Any other questions?
And since we are talking about mental objects, like you mentioned, whatever we experience something that is agreeable, that is likable, that we enjoy, that gets stored. So is that the way to, when we experience something that is agreeable, we start seeing the three natures of, three characters of every things at that time, so that it does not store. Is that the way to go ahead with it?
Could you repeat it? I was not paying much attention to
Okay.
it.
I was just sorry. I have a little bit of runny nose, so maybe my voice is also not that
No,
great.
your voice is quite clear to me.
I was just asking, like the whatever we have something that is agreeable, that we enjoy, those are the things that get stored in the mind, are the ones that we don't enjoy, but not the neutral ones. Is that correct, Bhante?
No, they all become mental objects. Past, present, future, internal, external, subtle, gross, everything we could become mental objects. And mind is unimaginably powerful, more powerful than anything else we can think of. Chitta is called mind. Mind is called chitta. Chitta also is called picture in Pali. Chitra in Sanskrit. When you hear the word chitra, some people who knows Sanskrit can relate to that. Chitra. One day Buddha said to monks, have you seen charana chitta? Charana means moving, pictures. That means movies. Have you seen movies? Because there were no movies. But there were kind of pictures that you can take from place to place and show like a show. And that's called charana chitta. Charana chitta. And Buddha said this charana chitta is this movie is made up of many people, articles, objects, various things they use to make that picture. And that picture, the mind is greater than that picture, more powerful than that picture. Variety is varied. And he asked, animals in the world are more variety are there among animals. I mean, there are maybe trillions and trillions of animals of all sorts. The Buddha said mind is even more powerful than all these animals. It is 100% true even today. Everything we have now, you see, computers, internet, this and that, I mean, countless things that we have, all are mind created. The mind is so powerful that it can create anything. So the mind is a creator. Because mind is the most powerful thing. And therefore all these that mind creates are mental objects. They are all called Dhamma. This is Dhamma eventually appears like this in this form.
Hmm.
But because this is what you create in the mind and keep improving, all these more steps of improvement, mental objects. The steps of improvement is mental objects because you have to think how to manipulate objects. Either figures, digital, mostly these days everything is digital. So we have to think of the way how to manipulate figures 1 to 9, 1 to 9, 1 to 9 or 0 to 9.
Zero to nine. Zero to nine.
0, 1.
0, 0 to 9?
0, 1.
Yeah. I don't know. But I heard that it is the manipulation of figures, all digital, all created in the mind. They all are mental objects. Every step of the creation is mental object. And they are called Dhamma.
So why cannot the people be like, people are like that too, they're mind created.
People like what?
People are also could be mind created.
For sure. People are, we all are created by the mind to be like this. Yeah. I think this is enough, eh?